Earlier today, I did an FTP test using the new TrainerRoad Ramp Test. So for this week's video, I'm going to give you my initial impressions of what that's all about. The Ramp Test is a new FTP test from TrainerRoad that's meant as a substitute for either the 8-minute test, the 20-minute test, or the very grueling 60-minute test. The way that it works is that you start off with 5 minutes at about 45% of whatever you have set as your current FTP. Then every minute it steps up by about 6%. So for me, it started off at 151 watts and it stepped up about 20 watts every minute. This test doesn't have a specific timeline, you go until failure. And to get your FTP, it takes 75% of your best 1 minute power. From what I understand, there's a couple reasons why TrainerRoad wanted to come up with a new way to test for your FTP. First is that people just aren't very good at pacing. Whether it was the 8-minute test, the 20-minute test, or the 60-minute test, people weren't very good at pacing their efforts throughout the duration, so then the data that you get isn't very accurate. Then also, people just weren't doing them. So FTP tests can be these really big, scary, difficult tests, but the data that you get from it's really important. So if they could come up with a test that's less menacing, then they'd have a lot more people who are training to the right zones. So how'd my test go? Prior to taking an off-season break at the end of September, my FTP was 330 watts. And after doing the ramp test, it pegged my FTP at 303 watts, which is right where I'd expect it to be after 8 weeks off. My initial impressions of this test are 2 big thumbs up. I found that the ramp test was far less daunting than any of the traditional FTP tests. Now that certainly doesn't mean it's easy. It gets really challenging, especially right when you get towards that failure threshold. But I didn't find that I had to really psych myself up mentally prior to doing the test like I typically do for a 20-minute or an 8-minute FTP test. What that means is that I'm more likely to do this test more often. Also, I would say that this test is overall less physically demanding than the 8 or 20-minute FTP test that I've done in the past. When I've prepared for an FTP test in the past, I've always really wanted to make sure that I'm really well rested because I know that it's going to be a big effort. And not that you'd want to go into this test fatigued, but it's something that I'd be less concerned about because it really is only a couple minutes that you're really working hard. These are just initial impressions. Time will tell if the current number that it's given me is accurate, and when I continue to do this test, if it continues to give me accurate numbers. But if you're someone who's been putting off your FTP test just because it's something that's a big mental hurdle to get over, then I certainly suggest that you try the TrainerRoad Ramp Test. So thanks a lot for checking out this week's video. If you like what you see, you can click the subscribe button down below. And until next time, happy training.
Oh, this you crazy mother.